From the Oklahoman newsroom, it's our college softball update, our weekly look at college softball here in Oklahoma City as we gear up for the Women's College World Series. This is our first as we really accelerate into the postseason, guys. And if you've got a great name for this video series, give us a holler. Let us know. We threw out some ideas before we started, but we want to let you get in on the action. But guys, we've got a lot of softball to talk about. Regular season is over. Big 12 tournament starts Friday here in Oklahoma City out at Hall of Fame Stadium. Brooke, right now, it really looks like the Sooners are the team to beat in the Big 12, undefeated through the regular season. Gonna be difficult to see anybody coming here to Oklahoma on field, a setup that the Sooners are very familiar with, and beating them in this Big 12 tournament, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think OU going into this weekend is definitely the favorite, you know, just the way that they have been playing and the fact that they're playing, you know, teams that they've faced recently. I think, though, the biggest challenge that they're going to have is the fact that they're starting off with Texas at 2 p.m. on Friday, and they swept Texas because they swept every team they played in the Big 12. But they're playing a Texas team that pushed them to the brink in the Sunday series finale when they were playing. I think OU ended up winning 5-4, but starting pitcher Paige Parker, who recently just won Pitcher of the Year in the Big 12, really struggled in that start. Gave up a home run, issued 3 walks, and was taken out, I think, in just a third of an inning, which is tied for her shortest career outing, her shortest start ever. So OU's going to play a team that they've seen recently that they really struggled against. But I think if they can get past Texas in that first game, I mean, they've got to be the favorite. I think they're the favorite even entering that game. You
know, Barry, when we saw the Sooners win the Women's College World Series a year ago, and we knew that they had such a huge chunk of their team returning, we thought that this sort of thing might happen. But as you've watched these results roll in and the wins and, you know, just impressive performance after impressive performance, what struck you most about how Oklahoma has played this year on the heels of such a great season last year?
Well, you know, it sort of mirrors a year ago in that they won the 2016 NCAA title, and didn't get off to such a great start in 2017. The non-conference was a little bit rugged, ended up dominating the Big 12, but didn't even get one of the 8 national seeds. Ended up 9th, having to go to Auburn for the Super Regional. This team took care of business much more than last year's team. There was that unfortunate loss in New Mexico. Was it Boston U? Boston University beat the Sooners. Outside of that, no inexplicable results. So it seems like this team is even more focused than in the past. Now, I've seen great teams come to Oklahoma City for a quarter century and not win the title. Nothing is assured for a 3rd straight championship. But clearly, this team has the goods to do it. It has the experience. It has everything you need. They've done it before. They got to be the favorite, and you know, Patty's team is primed for history.
You know, Barry talks about all those intangible things that they have, Brooke. They also have some really good individuals, and we saw that played out in the Big 12 honors that were handed out earlier in the week. You know, basically everything that was available to win, the Sooners won, except a Player of the Year award, which it sort of seems like to me is maybe a hybrid type award, offense, defense, all that goes to Vanessa Shippey at OSU. We can talk about her in just a second, but OU really dominated those individual awards.
They really did. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, Paige Parker is the Pitcher of the Year. This is the 4th time that she's won it. So every single year that she's been at OU, she's been named Pitcher of the Year, and that's just, you know, a little slice of how dominant she's been since she's arrived at OU. I mean, it's just been incredible. And then you look at Kelsey Arnold, senior shortstop, won Defensive Player of the Year for the 2nd time. She also won it in 2016. Jocelyn Allo won Freshman of the Year. She's the 4th Sooner to win that award consecutively. That kicked off with Paige Parker winning it, then Shay Knighton, then last year Nicole Mendez. So it just shows how dominant OU's been. And then, oh, by the way, Coach Patty Gasso won Coach of the Year for the 7th year in a row. I mean, it's just the kind of dominance that you don't see in many other sports, and it's really impressive what OU's been able to do and the way that they've been able to sustain their legacy, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, and as you list off all those players, Barry, I'm reminded that Paige Lowry wasn't among those individual award winners. Top player taken in the professional softball draft. Shay Knighton, who we saw basically carry the Sooners in some very needed moments last year in the Women's College World Series. You know, some great individual talent, not winning individual awards. I think it just says, you know, what a great collection of players they have, but it sort of begs the question, who's the best player on this team? I mean, who's the best softball player on this current Oklahoma roster?
Well, you generally have to go back to the pitching. I mean, if you got a team where your pitcher's not the dominant factor, you're probably headed for trouble. So it's Paige Parker, and the way she's performed for 3 years has just been phenomenal. So, but the story of these Sooners is they do have a bunch of people around her, including other pitchers. You know, they won the title game. In the title game last year, Patty used 3 pitchers, none in mop-up duty. I mean, it was like you're watching the Rangers or somebody play the Orioles. I mean, pitching changes like crazy. So this is a unique time in OU softball. The collection of talent. Maybe it continues. Odds are it won't. It rarely does on any team, any sport. So if you're an Oklahoma softball fan, treasure this time because this is really something special. You got great individual talent and you got a lot of it. And the results speak for themselves.
I feel remiss to not list the whole roster, Brooke. Sydney Romero, Kaylee Clifton, on and on. I mean, this goes that there's going to be big plays made by a variety of players as this postseason gets underway. In your mind, does it come back to the pitchers, or is there a position player, maybe an offensive player that you feel like is going to really need to play well as this postseason gets underway?
You know, to me, that person's Kaylee Clifton. You know, she's been solid at the plate, but she's been even more dominant in the field. And I think that her position is especially important because she usually plays second base. When Kelsey Arnold went out with a hamstring injury, she slid over and played shortstop and really anchored that position down. So her showing her versatility, showing her defensive skills in the field, I think that she's going to be really, really key in OU making a deep run because this team, the reason that they've gotten this far and the reason that they were able to get through the conference unscathed is their defense. You know, it's not the sexy part of softball. It's not the part where there's all this power hitting and all of these just eye-popping stats. They're doing the little things right, and some of those little things are fielding, are, you know, anchoring at second, anchoring at shortstop, making sure that you have players that can plug the holes behind the pitcher, and they help make Paige Parker look really good, make Paige Lowry look really good, and Mariah Lopez. I mean, I could go on and on. There's so many good players, but I would keep an eye on Kaylee Clifton.
Barry, before we talk a little more broadly about the national view, I mentioned Vanessa Shippey before, the OSU standout who was named Player of the Year, the only non-Sooner to win one of those individual awards. A lot of what's happening at OSU gets overshadowed because of how good what's happening at OSU gets overshadowed by what's happening at OU. They may not be yet to that level. Not many teams are that OU is. Looks to me like OSU may be turning a little bit of a corner. Is Vanessa Shippey and what they're doing just going under the radar, but are you seeing some positive vibes what's happening in Stillwater?
Oh yeah, the Cowgirls are much more competitive. No doubt that Kenny Gajeski has lifted that program and put it back on the map. You know, OSU's got its own proud softball tradition. 4 or 5 Women's World Series appearances in the 90s. Got back there, what year was it? 11 or whenever it was.
It's been the last
so
decade.
Nice,
sure.
you know, a lot of good tradition there. And what Kenny's done is got the Cowgirls relevant again to where they're going to be in the NCAA tournament. They're not going to get a great seed. I mean, they're going to have to go someplace and win. But that's all you can ask for, and as you're building that program up. So yeah, and people like Shippey has come in and really laid a foundation for that program to get better, and the facilities are solid. It's a good area of the country to compete in, so I think the future is bright for OSU softball.
Yeah, as we look nationally, though, it's a reminder of how stacked the whole scene is, Brooke, because you're talking about Oklahoma dominating the Big 12. We've seen a resurgence, or a surge, not a resurgence, a surge of SEC teams in recent years. Maybe the resurgence is the Pac-12, as you've got some of the best teams in the country, the very tip top, coming out of the Pac-12. As you look nationally, who are the teams you're going to be looking for to be really strong, have really good chances to come out of the regionals, super regionals, make it here? A couple schools that popped to mind for you?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with the Pac-12 and their dominance. I mean, you look at Oregon and UCLA. I would look at both of those teams as essentially being locks for Oklahoma City, especially Oregon. They were #1 in the RPI. They slipped to #2. Again, not that big of a fall. UCLA is #1, but Oregon to me is the most dangerous team because they were able to beat OU. Granted, OU had to go on the road. They kind of played them in the middle of their conference season. And Patty Gasso scheduled that trip where they played Oregon and Oregon State to give them kind of a change up, not have a weekend off in the middle of the season and kind of this crucial time going into postseason. But the fact that Oregon was able to beat OU, I think it showed OU some of its flaws. And if Oregon can do that to the Sooners, and this was a game that was never really in doubt, they took control early and finished it off through the end. So I would look to them as being one of the favorites in this tournament.
You know, not only do you see Oregon and UCLA up there, Washington and Arizona State also looking really formidable. But Barry, then you see those SEC teams. It really looks like there's going to be a power struggle, I think, between your Floridas, your Tennessees, probably even on down into some of those other teams too. We've
seen a nice resurgence by the Pac-12. You know, in the last few years, the SEC has sort of usurped the Pac-12 as the premier softball conference. In the old days, it was nothing to have 4 or 5 Pac-12 teams, Pac-10 at the time, teams in the 8-team World Series field. But this year, 4 of the top 8 in the RPI are from the Pac. A little bit of resurgence. The Florida State's also up there, only 2 SEC schools. Of course, the SEC's got it figured out, just like they do in football. You know, the way they schedule and play each other and keep it all, you know, they boost each other's RPI. So they're all ranked, 11 of the 12 schools are ranked in the top 30, I think it is. So you're going to see the NCAA bracket filled with SEC teams. Some of them will get through. We'll see how many make it to Oklahoma City.
Yeah, and Brooke, remind us, a lot of conferences this week in their conference tournaments. Next week we start the NCAA tournament, right?
Yeah, that's right. The exception there is the Pac-12, and they don't have a conference tournament. They're kind of like the way the Big 12 was for that kind of hiatus that the Big 12 took, where they didn't have a championship weekend. So the Pac-12, they will not, you know, have any kind of tournament. Instead, it's the last weekend of their regular season. And you have some teams, I think it's the Huskies, they have a bye this weekend, which I would hate if I were a member of that team, when you have everyone else fighting to kind of retain their spot in the RPI, try to impress the committee to get one of those top 8 seeds, and you're done. You have to sit it out. You have to wait at home and see how all these conference tournaments shake out. The situation's kind of out of your hands. So it is a really interesting thing to see what happens. Tennessee has the possibility of playing LSU in the first round of the SEC tournament. And I think that game could end up determining who gets that number 8 seed whenever the regionals kind of shake out. But yeah, I mean, we're right at it. We are just about beginning the most exciting part of the softball season.
And we'll have regionals next week. You'll have the top 16-ish seeds hosting, and then super regionals. I have to think there's no doubt in anybody's mind that the Sooners are going to be a super regional host, right, Barry?
Shouldn't be. You never know, but you know, the OU's RPI went up this week. Tobacco Road reported up to number 3, so seems unlikely. With the schedule that Oklahoma played, because the Big 12 is not as powerful as these other two, you know, there's cases to be made that they should drop down. But any committee member that wants to drop the Sooners down into 6 or 7 or even 8, 9 range, think about what you're doing. Think about who you're making play Oklahoma. If you're a 8 or 9 seed, minding your own business, doing a nice job, and all of a sudden, hey, you get to play Oklahoma in the super regional. You say, well, what did I do? Well, you know, I was doing everything I was supposed to do, and you're making me play an unbeatable team. So OU's going to be ranked high. What they've done over the course of time has got to be considered. They'll be, I think, a top 4 seed.
And then they host at home, Brooke, and we've seen that's a packed place. Oklahoma playing to sellouts virtually every time they've played at home this year. That's going to be a tough ticket to come by, and an equally tough place, I would think, for any team to come into and beat the Sooners.
Yeah, exactly. Although it did happen last year, they lost the first game of their regional round to South Dakota State, North Dakota State. It's one of the Dakota States.
North
Dakota State. They lost that game, and then they went on to not drop a single game the rest of the tournament. But that kind of set a really weird tone for the regional. It kind of gave OU, they're on the precipice of, you know, you lose one more game or 1 or 2 more games and you're done. And that would have been a hugely shocking result last season. I don't think they're going to have the same kind of thing happen this year. That was a team that, you know, really needed to find its identity late in the season, and that loss really gelled them. I think this team has come in, like we talked about earlier, they were focused from the get-go. They didn't have any of the kind of blunders that the 2017 team had. So I would expect that they're going to capitalize on hosting the regional, likely hosting the super regional, And OU's already had to bring in those auxiliary bleachers throughout the entire season, so they literally cannot bring in any more extra seating. It's already been really packed. It's going to be even more packed for this. So the minute the tickets go on sale, the second the tickets go on sale, I would make sure that you're in that queue to pick those up. Otherwise, you'll find them on StubHub for a huge markup.
And I suspect there'll probably be people that might not get into regional or super regional games that will get into the Women's College World Series should the Sooners make it. Much more seating available at Hall of Fame Stadium. We'll have all your coverage of Big 12 tournament, regionals, super regionals, and on into the Women's College World Series. Lots of softball left, and we'll try to bring it to you here as well, so be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.